orders by Mr. President before orders will be executed for critical arrest to be made of those, perpetrating heinous crimes in Nigeria's North Central. And we might as well ask that also those responsible for the killings in Jos for much of this year and last year should be arrested. If arrests have been made, prosecutions should be carried out as well. And these people should be jailed. They should, never coexist with people on the face of the earth, such that there can be stability in Nigeria's North Central. And agricultural activity can thrive just as well. So, it's a cheery development, a heartwarming development. And of course, this will bring some sense of safety and security for people in Yelwata, in Benue State. But more importantly, for this to be sustained such that there will be security in Nigeria's North Central. Jeffrey, I wonder if you're drawing any, direction or instruction from this development as well.
I'm happy arrests have been made, although we believe that you don't need to be instructed. But for them to be instructed, there's something we do not know. So I'll give it to the government as far as those public direction, whether it's through a statement from the president or as it was done in Benue State. There's certainly some things we don't know. But whatever it is that we don't know, it's not a good thing. That is a matter of fact. It's not a good thing because other climes, other places where these things happen, we get briefing every other day by the authorities as to efforts being made to arrest perpetrators of any crime. They do not need to wait for the commander-in-chief or the president or even the governor of the state. They just get to work because that's their primary responsibility. But no, this is Nigeria, so there are many things that may not be able to be said in public, but I can tell you that from what I know, from what we know, it may not really be, because some of them have complained to the effect that when some arrests are being made, they get orders from above. This above, we don't know who the aboves are. I'm not sure it's just one person. It could be different levels of influence. So when it comes directly from the commander-in-chief, then everybody who is above has to keep his above somewhere, because the one that's above all of them in terms of political hierarchy has spoken. So we hope it's going to get better. As Bukola has said, we hope that justice is done. Bukola, one other thing I'm tracking again is to the fact that we need to evolve and develop our democracy to the point where we just have this constant relationship update from our leaders, whether it's the president or the governor. Donald Trump is the most powerful political leader in the world. America is the biggest economy in the world, the biggest military in the world. So you can imagine how busy someone like the President of the United States of America is. But constantly, whether as he's coming up from a plane, he's heading for a meeting, he's just coming out of the White House, there's always a conversation with the press. We literally have to wait for a proper media parley to have word, besides whatever is being covered at the State House or event where the president goes to or a governor goes to. So how we get to hear from most of the time is either there's a visit, there's an event. But the American president literally just getting off to his helicopter, reporters are there asking questions, he's responding, because he needs to keep them updated. I don't know why that is not a culture here in Nigeria. If you go to the UK Parliament, for instance, is it PMQ they call it now, Prime Minister's Questions, every Wednesday, well, I think today, you see the opposition engaging, with the leadership of the country. That is how they practice that. The whole idea of what I'm saying is to the effect that there's always constant engagement between the leaders and the people through the press. I think it's something we should adopt here as a people so that we don't have to wait for a media parley, a specific time for people to get to know what the president or a governor, sometimes even the ministers, because do you know that sometimes to get the president may even be easier than to get some of these ministers? It's very funny. There are 48 of them. I don't know how many Nigerians can mention up to 12 of the 48. That they know, by their names, right? So if we don't even know you by name, how do we even know what you're doing? I think the administration should, and it's not unique to this administration anyway, we must put that in proper perspective. The minister should come out, whoever you want to talk to, I don't care where you're going to, talk to the people, find out what's going, let people find out what you're doing in your ministry. Because sometimes it may be that you're doing something, but because people are not aware, you're being critical. So for instance, I used to talk about Boyega Yotola, the Minister for
Marine and Blue Economy.
Marina, to be very honest, I don't know what is going on in that ministry. I don't even know. I was one of the, I personally was excited because I felt that ministry is innovative. The potential is enormous. You don't want to know how. But I don't know. The minister, I've never seen him talk to anyone. We don't know what is going on. I don't even understand how he works within that space. And it's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be. So it's something that the government needs to check. Proper accountability, engagement with the people so that we know
and it's
what you're doing.
a good thing that you have mentioned this, Jeffrey. It's 2 years since this administration began, and it's, you know, time to also ask questions of those different ministries because they execute government policy. And so what are the key performance indexes by which they're measured, by which progress under their ministry is measured? What partnerships have they formed, you know, with the subnationals in key areas? Because the economy of Nigeria is not just in the Federal Capital Territory. The impact of the work of the ministers is also supposed to be felt across the states of the Federation. So what partnerships have they executed, you know, and perhaps we might as well mention it this time, that, you know, the president inaugurated the distribution of tractors and agricultural implements just days ago. And, you know, this should shore up reports that we have just about 1,000 tractors nationwide. So who are the farmers on the roll call of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture who have benefited from this distribution? How will these significantly impact on the agriculture sector such that we can improve our yield? So, as Jeffrey has said, there should be, you know, constant communication and open door policy, you know, operated by these ministers such that we can measure their impact, you know, in the subnationals using, you know, a partnership template, you know, with relevant institutions and bodies under their ministry. So perhaps we'll get on this
yes,
in the coming days or weeks.
We will definitely. At some point, the president had to instruct the ministers to go and talk. He doesn't have to do that.
So what do we have for today, Jeffrey?
Let's talk about what we have to do today on the program. First off, we're going to start with what we call it the Tinubunomics. More like how he's been able to manage the economy, how well, how not well, what are the challenges, what are the things he's done very well, what are the things he's not done quite well, what are the places to improve upon, what are the things he should scrap, what are the things he should review. Well, Kelvin Emmanuel is an economist. He'll be joining us to break it down for us right here on the program. So we're going to binge through sectors and how the economy is impacting those sectors today on the program. That's our first segment.
And besides that, we'll also be touching on politics, where the new coalition party continues to generate debate. Besides that, well, the party is called the All Democratic Alliance. And we'll be looking at their chances at taking power from the ruling All Progressives Congress in the next election. Besides that, we'll also be touching on the politics of the ruling All Progressives Congress as well. So, you know, what is that story about realignments, about picking a vice presidential candidate from the Northwest?
As a matter of fact, Mr. Agbo, that's the guy you're seeing on your screen, is the new president of Directors Guild of Nigeria. We talk Nollywood today as well on the program. So these are just the highlights. A couple of other things you would like to see happen on the program is we'll get to serve you on the program today. So we're bringing you some of the highlights as early as possible. Hey, but don't forget how you can get to us. It's very important. Our feedback channel, email is one of them. Email is one of them. What do you call it now? WhatsApp is the other. We also have CTV Morning Brief. That's a hashtag on X. That's how you can get to us on X. Post on X, tag us, backroom guys, to be able to bring it up to speed, bring us up to speed, and we'll amplify your voice as you get to talk to us on the program. But hey, let's take a short break. Not a break, but in just a moment, let's bring you the newspaper headlines and what the dailies are saying in just a moment. Okay, so let's bring in our public affairs analyst, Mr. Fetayo. Mr. Fetayo, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's good to have you.
Good morning from this end.
Okay, wherever that side is.
No, I'm just your neighbor. I'm in Ogun State with you.
Okay, no problem. We're just a stone throw away. Let's get to the first paper. That's the New Telegraph. New Telegraph is leading with ongoing constitutional review exercise in futility, says Sergey. Ongoing constitutional review exercise in futility, so Professor Sergey says, kicks against NAS state's creation move. So there are so many, I can't remember the exact number, but I've seen a couple of the things that, Mr. Fatai, the things that they want to review. Some are very bright ideas, some, I know it's not going to go anywhere because of history. But the issue of state creation is perhaps the one that Professor Sergey is talking about here. What do you make of some of the provisions that are itemized to be amended in the Constitution and certain inclusions that have also been brought in by the National Assembly, through the people by the National Assembly?
You know, there's one thing to do a review and there's another thing to implement it. You and I, you will agree with me that we have several constitutional review, let them do this, confab, etc., and nothing has been done. And some of our politicians these days are trying to be corrected. If it's not beneficial to them, they hardly implement it. All these state creation, not state creation, even the ones that have been created, how are they being funded? How are they fair so far? Are people enjoying the dividend of democracy? You know, so all this one coming up with another one, at least you know, many a times when they said they should review budget, by the time you are seeing it, you see a lot of padding, something that will benefit them especially. So just like the legal luminary said, it's just a, what's it called? It's just an exercise in futility. I don't think we need that. They should look in what's already in existence and make it better so that people can feel the governance, the good governance that the administration or whoever is in power promises.
Somewhere at the bottom of the New Telegraph, before I let you go on this particular paper, 2027, opposition still in disarray as PDP INEC meeting ends in a deadlock. INEC had a meeting with the PDP yesterday. Well, as the riders, SDP, NWC allegedly suspends national chairman and 2 others. I don't know, we didn't see this coming. Metu Ologbodiyan, ex-official members tackle Damagun over attack on Ologun Agba. So you can see the PDP met with INEC yesterday. I listened to the INEC chairman. He was simply telling them, go back, put your house in order. We're primarily not your problem. Just find out who your secretary is and then communicate with us. That's perhaps a summary of what he was saying. And now the issue around releases or pressers from Ologun Agba, who is the National Publicity Secretary, as to whether he has the authority or he was authorized by the NWC or not to send those releases that are causing controversy. Mr. Fetayo.
Yes, just like you said, if you don't put your house in order, even your neighbor will tell you how to rule your own houses. And I think INEC has done a good job to be independent. That we will not be the one to put your house in order. Do whatever is necessary. Tell us who your secretary, tell us who your national chairman, whatever it is, and then we go by that. If they want to make a meaningful impact, they need to resolve their issue, internal crisis, amicably. And it's just like I think the governor of Zamfara, who said that problem in PDP is the issue of ego. So everybody should calm down, like they say Yoruba Farabale. So you should just let go and let it be a win-win situation. You can't have it all the time. So somebody should take in, somebody should sacrifice, and for the interest of peace and for them to make a meaningful impact come 2027.
Brilliant. So let's head over to the Guardian newspaper this morning, Mr. Fetayo, and listen to the headline: 2024 to 2025 fiscal policy crisis. Project funding, execution stall over poor budget implementation. And you know, just days ago, there were reports that the National Assembly was extending the 2024 budget execution. And, we're just talking about the need for the ministries to communicate more their activity. So what sense are you making of this project funding and the stalling of the implementation? What sense are you making of it with regards to the 2024 and 2025 budget? And more importantly, how it is impacting on the economy?
Yeah. You see, it's just worrisome that 2024 budget, as even almost half of the year into 2025, we are battling with funding, we are battling with execution. You will hear that contractor has moved out of sight because it was not properly funded. I thought that money had been budgeted for. Where did it go to? Who are the people, disbursing these funds? And sometimes because of this anti-party crisis and all of that, it doesn't allow smooth implementation of budget. I think if you cannot perform, it's done on whoever that is the leader, whether at the federal level or at the state level, to ease them out, because it's affecting the Nigeria, the masses, who are the most beneficial of whatever infrastructure, whatever implementation they want to do. So if you are not fit to be in an office, you should excuse yourself or you should be shown a way out. So all these talking about 2024 budget implementation and funding, I think everything has been provided for. So why are we having difficulties in funding a project that will, have impact in the life of people? If you are not ready to lead, then just excuse yourself. But it's very difficult for somebody to excuse himself or herself in the position of authority in Nigeria. I've seen a member, even in UK, because he came late to the House of Lords, he resigned. But we can't have that here. That's to show discipline when it comes to leadership.
It's a valid point that you have made. But before we leave this story, what questions should we be asking as far as the budget of ministries is concerned? Because if you look at certain aspects or locations of governance, it doesn't look like they're suffering from lack of funding. The FCT, for instance, there has been, flurry of commissioning of projects, and that speaks to the timely release of funds to contractors to execute budgets. So what questions should we be asking of ministries that are not getting their funding for the execution of their projects, and why?
Yes, we should be asking who is disbursing these funds, how much has been released so far, what are the percentage in terms of execution. If you say you need 5 naira, what have you done with 3 naira that have been released? Even from the contractor himself, we should be asking them, how much have you gotten so far? Because we know ABC was budgeted for this project or to fund this project. And even from the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Works, or the supervising ministry or consultant, everybody needs to be asking questions from them that, what have you done so far with what have been released, so that we will know where our problem lies, or who is the person, or you are using it for another thing entirely. So those are the questions. Even anti-gravity should come in and look at how much have you released so far, how much has been expended, what are the level of work done in this project or whatever that have been budgeted for. So those are the questions. We shouldn't be asking for how are they be funding, what have been budgeted for since last year. It's just terrible. It's just a pity. I'm sorry to use the word, that is terrible that we're discussing about budget implementation and funding, and where other ministries are making wave, just like you said, FCT and all of that.
All right.
Jeffrey, go ahead.
Let's get to the next paper. Yes, Nigerian News Direct. That's the one we're looking at now. 2027, Barrow, that's the DSP, Deputy Senate President, dismisses running mate speculations, tells supporters to back Tinubu's agenda. Mr. Feta, it appears that this running mate matter is not like there's a truth to it. We don't know. We're hearing Barrow, we're hearing Ganduje. People are saying, no, we haven't come to that point yet.
Even the
president has he reserves the right to pick who he wants. And so this has been an internal issue that the APC is trying to manage. But what do you make of it?
Yes, it's going to come up. We dealt with the issue of a Muslim ticket. I'm sure definitely it will be part of the agenda that will shape 2027. Of course, some of these people, directly or indirectly, they will be pushing themselves out there, or their followers, or some psychophans that are following them, release press releases. You know, we also saw a report that said Dogara will be a preferred candidate and all of that. All these are political, politicking leading to 2027. But just like you said,
Okay. Mr. Fetayo, we must thank you so much for coming on the pro. Okay. Maybe you can land on your thoughts. We didn't hear you for a moment.
Still
okay,
have...
I think it's different. Okay, Mr. Fetayo, thank you so much. Mr. Fetayo is a public affairs analyst and a journalist. Thank you so much for coming on the program, for helping us break it down as far as the issues are concerned on the dailies. But we'll come back in just a moment to find out what you're saying on the pages of the social media before we get to the very first conversation for the day with Kelvin Emmanuel on Tinubunomics. Join us again. All right, before bringing Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel to discuss Tinubunomics, let's bring you up to speed with what you've been saying on the, let's call it the front pages of the social media. Well, the big one has to do with that NYSC lady, Ms. Rita O'Shea. You know, she had criticized President Tinubu's government at some point about the hardship she's not experiencing as a young person because of the impact of the policies of government. And she went viral that moment, and a lot of people rallied around her. Well, we understand that NYSC, or service to the nation, has been extended by 2 months. The allegation is to the effect that this is because she criticized the president. Well, I haven't seen the official statement from the NYSC, but that is what is all over the social media, that she criticized the president. That's why our service here was extended by 2 months. And if that's the case, then there's a lot of work to be done. So let me just read what people are saying. I know that Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the AAC, has also said it's not going to be acceptable. It's going to mobilize her NYSC, and she must pass out like other of our colleagues. So the NYSC has to come out clean. We'll be able to find out exactly what the position is. But the speculation, the allegation is to the effect that because she spoke against the policies of government, and that's why her service is extended. Well, Gerald, graphics designer, said this is nothing but political punishment maxed as protocol. So because she spoke up against economic hardship everyone is feeling, NYSC suddenly finds a reason to extend her service here. Shameful. Intimidation tactics won't silence the truth, if any. It amplifies it. No Rita, Ray, no POP. A personal parade, that's what it means actually. So they say it's protocol that you're not supposed to, just like a civil servant, you're not supposed to speak against the government. Does that follow? To what extent, the latitude of that law, how far does it go? Does it take away the fundamental human rights as granted in our grown norm, the Constitution? That's a different kettle of fish. Bukola, you have to
And I'm just wondering, Jeffrey, is it, you know, a strategy or an attempt to stifle expression, you know, henceforth, going forward, even after Rita leaves service, such that any other youth service coming after this will not be able to kick against the oppressive policies of the government as it impacts on members of the youth service. These are things that we should reflect on. Are Nigerians any better after what is being termed as the bold economic reforms of the administration? Petrol is now selling for 935 naira per litre in Lagos. And you know the ricochet effect that that has on the economy. So these are critical issues. Extending her service here doesn't reduce, you know, for any moment or by any shred of the imagination, the reality that is on ground. Exactly. And we must continue to drive home that point, that the reforms, bold as they are impacting very negatively on Nigerians.
You have the next one, Bukola.
So I have the next one, which is from Igbokwe Namdi, who says, we have freedom of speech in Nigeria, but freedom after the speech is not guaranteed. Reminds me of a former Ugandan president. Rescue as that's
it, rescue call.
That's another one. You have it, Jeffrey.
She made her point already. Whatever is the consequence, does it really matter? Enjoy the 2 months. It's not 2 years. Well, I don't know where this person stands on this, but As a matter of fact, this is how I look at it, Bukola. Whatever law there is inferior to the ground norm. Whatever law, I'm going to say that again, to the extent of inconsistency, becomes void. Whatever law there is, I know there are policies that guide organizations like ours. There are policies that guide us here. There are policies that guide the NYSC. That's why I said, to what extent does the policy stop someone from speaking against the policies of government? Because if it is misinterpreted, this is going to be looked as gagging, and this is not good for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Our ground norm gives us that freedom of expression. Did she insult the president? I can't remember what she said. Did she insult the president? Did she say anything derogatory? Wasn't she speaking about impact of the policy of government on her? So the lawyers will be able to help us as to, this is NYSC rule as against the Constitution of the Federal Republic that is superior to the NYSC rule. So, well, the legalese is all around this as well, but some people have taken it upon themselves that we don't care what the NYSC is thinking. As far as we are concerned, there's freedom of expression. This girl has spoken her voice. You must not put. And again, sometimes because of optics, the agencies of government and institutions must be sensitive. So whether or not they are right to punish her, let's even accept without conceding. Because of the bad optics sometimes, which the perception of hostility against dissenting voice, you use your discretion. Even the law court does it. Even the Supreme Court can look at the situation, and because that's what it's called the Court of Public Policy. If something is going to bring the country down, then you have to think through before you begin to look at, you know, some of these things. So anyway.
As you have said, I believe that her lawyers, if she's taking this up in the law courts, will interpret what the rule in the core says as against what the Constitution says.
The core is just an establishment, an act that is inferior to the Constitution. So the lawyers will be able to marry what is where. But she's a young girl. Let's not put her through this hell and warm water. It's not necessary. But
there's more on what Nigerians are saying on the front pages.
We'll hold on to what the Nigerians are saying. And then bring in our guest, Kelvin Emmanuel, is already with us in our Abuja studios. Mr. Kelvin, thank you so much for coming through. As always, let's look at the economy. Good morning, Mr. Kelvin, first up.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, Geoff and Bukola.
All right.
It's always a privilege to be here.
Fantastic, fantastic, Mr. Kelvin. So we're not going to drag you into legalese. You're not a lawyer on the NYSC matter. Let's stay with the issues around the economy, which is your core expertise. I would like to begin with, there are so many things in my head to ask, but let's begin with your general assessment. There's been some gains. Some people have been burnt as a result of these gains. Now we're seeing the interplay of geopolitics, what is happening between Iran and the US and what is happening in that area. Strait of Hormuz that is affected, oil prices now spiking. We're neighboring $80, so good news for Nigeria as far as revenue is concerned, but bad news for us who go to the pump to buy PMS. So I want you to maybe aggregate what is playing out for us here on the program and tell us exactly where you see we stand as a people in terms of policy versus impact.
Geoff, I should let you know that, okay, before I start, I was just going to, talk about the last story, trending story, and about the fact that, look, we're not in a communist state, we're in a democracy. There is a constitution that allows freedom of expression, and the fact that allegedly this is going on, sends a very dangerous signal to Gen Z. And it tells them that in their country, they are not free to express their views. It's going to increase the pressure on the Japa syndrome you've seen because they want to get out of Nigeria to other parts of the world where they are allowed to express themselves. It's very important, that the government realizes that dissent is not an affront on the authority. Dissent creates for healthy debates in a democracy because there are over 200 million Nigerians. And nations are not built by yes men, But back to the issues we're talking about that regards the economy, I was going to tell you that crude oil price is actually back down to $65 per barrel. WTI was trading at 65 yesterday. Brent was trading at about $68 yesterday, which is below the budget benchmark. The budget benchmark, I think, is about between $70 and $75 a barrel, you know. So the temporary reprieve you said that the economy is going to have because crude oil prices are back above oil benchmark, well, is an illusion, because as you can see, the US President Trump has brokered a settlement, at least for now, between Israel and Iran. Is ordered for a ceasefire, you know. And so if we get into the economics of what happened in the Middle East, see, the Middle East produces about 26.6 million barrels of crude oil, down from about 30.4 million barrels of crude oil. The Middle East has installed refining capacity of 12.9 million barrels of crude, but it has capacity utilization of about 10.1 million barrels of crude. So you have countries like Oman, like Bahrain, like Kuwait, Qatar. You know, Qatar left OPEC in 2019 because it wants to focus on gas as a transition fuel. And Qatar is currently the third largest exporter of natural gas, LNG, around the world, after the US and Australia. You have the UAE, you have Saudi Arabia. So out of that 16 million barrels, for example, 16 of 26.6 million barrels of crude that is exported on a daily basis, about 13.1 million goes to the Asian tigers, 5.4 million goes to China, 1.1 goes from Iran to China, 2.9 million goes to South Korea, Japan gets about 2.3, India gets about 2.5. So 13.1 million barrels of crude oil from the Middle East goes to Southeast Asia, the Far East. And 2.9 million barrels goes to Europe, Western Europe, and then North America. Saudi Arabia, for example, has a refinery in Texas called Motiva Refinery that has installed capacity of about 54,000 barrels per day. So some of the crude, which is actually mid and light crude, it has API grade of between 31 and 38 degrees, you know, is sent to their refinery in Texas to be able to blend with the heavy crude there, because usually refineries that crude oil that has a higher API degree gives you more transportation fuels, like PMS, like diesel, like jets, and the likes. So you have a situation where if you look at the map of the world, the Middle East, the reason why crude oil prices were going up during the fight between Israel and Iran was because that Straits of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf is between mostly Iran and Qatar, between Turkey and Croatia, which is called the Bosphorus Channel. So when you had 3 years ago the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, the Bosphorus Channel was temporarily closed. Ships from the Black Sea could not come into Europe. So you have the Straits of Hormuz. So the fact that the Iranian parliament at the point approved for the closure of the Straits of Hormuz meant that 16 million barrels of crude oil that should normally on a daily basis go away from the Middle East to the Far East and then to Europe and to North America was threatened, which was the reason why crude oil prices touched $78, $79 a barrel. But the fact that there is a truce means that it's back down. And within this period, we've not seen the Nigerian government, CME, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, come up with a plan, considering that revenue realization has missed by 31%. And the National Assembly has extended the period for capital expenditure for the 2025 Appropriation Act from June to December 2025. So it's a sorry situation. Geoff, I'll tell you what. If you look at the 1.5 million barrels of crude Nigeria produces on a daily basis, cumulatively, I'll tell you it gets about 53.6%, which is equivalent to anywhere around 804,000 barrels of crude on a daily basis. So how is that broken down, and what revenues actually comes to the government, and what is the deficit component in the budget, and what are the challenges the government has? Out of that 804,000, 294,000 is used to pay for sale agreements, which are all the loans that NNPC structured, Project Gazelle, Project Leopard, Project Bison, Project Yield, turnaround maintenance for Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries. You know, I'm sure as time goes on, we'll have time to expatiate on that.
All right.
300,000 barrels is allocated to subsidies. So you have, you know, the allocation, production allocation, what NNPC gets on behalf of the Nigerian government. The question I keep asking is, if subsidy is over and if Sections 205 of the PIA has been implemented, why is 300,000 barrels of crude oil on a daily basis still allocated to paying subsidy? Is it because it's used to draw down on the $6.8 billion of debt?
All right.
The NNPC claims it was owing to international commodity traders under vendor financing program and DSDP, or is there something else the government has to tell us about where those subsidy savings are going to? Because as we speak, we're in a market-based PMS pricing model, and the government is not paying under recoveries on subsidy. So why is 300,000 barrels of crude allocated for payment of subsidy on a daily basis? 78,000 barrels daily today is allocated to pipeline security. And so if you put that number together, you're coming to be 594 plus 78, somewhere around 672,000 barrels of crude. If you minus it from 804, you arrive at somewhere around 131,000 barrels of crude. That 131,000 barrels is divided between tax oil, which goes to the FIRS, and royalty oil, which is calculated as the cumulative average between price, volume, and depth, you know, by NUPRC. It goes to royalty oil. So if you put that together, you're looking at anywhere around maybe $8.5 million on the daily basis. So that actually comes as tax and royalty oil to the government that is not encumbered by all the obligations, subsidy, by forced agreements, crude oil back loans.
So many questions in that space, payments. Mr. Emmanuel. And we might also ask, you know, the impact of subsidy savings at the subnational, where is it going to as well? And it's interesting that you have all of these figures off of the top of your head. But earlier, you mentioned the extension of the 2024 budget by the Senate, and that's where I want us to go to. Every budget is supposed to stimulate growth and economic recovery. I'm just wondering, between execution of policy and impact, what do you see in that space? Because The Guardian is reporting this morning that project funding is stalling due to funding. But we see in some spaces that there is no delay of funding. In fact, there's a flurry of execution of projects. So should we be witnessing more than 3.86% of economic growth if the budget 2024 and 25 is being executed in a more disciplined manner, in line with fiscal responsibility?
Bukola, very good question you asked. Listen, if you, for example, multiply the $8.5 million, 131,000 that is due for tax and royalty oil, for example, by 365 days, you arrive at somewhere around $30.1 billion daily. You know, when you do the numbers based on the current exchange rate, you're looking at anywhere less than 5 trillion. That is less than 10% of the total for the 2025 budget. So for me, when I look at the deficit that, in my opinion, has risen to anywhere around 17 or 18%, the debt to GDP ratio, you know, the structure of the budgets, the overhead costs, the personnel costs, the service-wide votes, you know, I don't see fiscal prudence and management. There is an issue with public procurement. There is an issue with the fact that the government doesn't respect the laws that it has in place. And the current Public Procurement Act of 2007 needs to be updated. As a matter of fact, I think that Nigeria should adopt a zero-based budgeting system. People should be able to justify what they're spending money on before they get funded for it. Because you have a situation where there is inflation of EPC costs. And I'll give you an example that doesn't even relate to the budget. You know, I think NNPC is not subject to public procurement, if I'm not mistaken. I'll give you an example with NNPC on NGIC, and this is a point I've always brought up. Nigerian Gas Infrastructure Company, which is the arm of NNPC responsible for building gas infrastructure around Nigeria. On AKK, Abuja, Kaduna, Kano, which is a 614-kilometer pipe, the monies voted for AKK was $2.8 billion. That's over $4 million per kilometer. Around the world, even for export pipeline. Now, Bukola, pay attention that this is actually a domestic pipeline. Even for export pipelines, it doesn't cost more than $1.5 million per kilometer to build a gas transmission pipe. But in Nigeria, NNPC is claiming that it's costing them over $4 million per kilometer to build a gas transmission pipe. That's an example of what I'm saying. Now, let's come back to the budget and come back to the fact that the government is not generating revenues as fast or enough to fund the expenditure estimates or assumptions that is created in the budget. You put up all these fancy numbers of what you're going to spend and how it's going to grow the economy, because when you look at how GDP is calculated, government or public spending plays a part in that calculation. But you're not raising as much revenue. The CME came and said that they generated 6.9 trillion naira from customs, from FIRS, from the oil and gas sector, et al. And the likes. But the question is, when you put that 6.9 trillion for the first half, and say, for example, they do another 7 trillion naira in the second half, it's close to 14 trillion. 14 trillion to about 54 trillion. It's still weak. Your revenue to budget is still very weak. Your revenue to GDP, your tax to GDP ratio is still very weak. So for me, the government has an issue with prudence, fiscal responsibility. It has an issue with procurement fraud, inflation of EPC costs. It has an issue with the fact that the size of government is too big. As a matter of fact, I'll say that under President Tinubu, we've had the biggest size of government I've seen. For somebody who comes from Lagos and who is supposed to be close to the private sector, I expected that he will implement the Stephen Orasanye report that has gone through several white paper reviews. What's the point of having such masterful work that was done by Pastor Orasanye if it's not implemented? There are so many government MDAs that are supposed to be merged or that are supposed to be deleted entirely, and they don't have any relevance to the running of the government that serves the people today. There is the inflation of projects and costs. There was back and forth recently between National Assembly and Nigerians on street lights, the cost of street lights, solar street lights, that was inserted in the budget. There are agencies of government and institutes that are funding constituency projects that is not supposed to be. So, for me, I feel like we have the wrong priorities in Nigeria, and we're not ready. I'll say that to you. We're not ready to grow. We're not doing the right things. We don't want to do the right things because there is no incentive to do the right things.
Mr. Manuel, if you can hear me, I'm happy we talked about the budget. I think it's about $38 billion as at the last time I checked in terms of used by 1.5. Cumulatively, as a nation, subnational, FCT, federal government, we're talking in the neighborhood of nothing quite massive to the size of the economy. But as you've said, we have to look at the revenue end before we begin to make a certain kind of projection. If you add the $18 billion to the $36 billion between state and federal governments, you see where the numbers are. But revenue is always a challenge for us. The deficit is almost a quarter of our entire budget, which if you cascade it down to the GDP, you can understand what the numbers look like when you're spending between 13 to 15 trillion naira to service debt and all of that. But where I'm going to with all of this is that government has said our fiscal management has looked good in terms of balance of payment, the trade balance of trade, which of course we know by the J-curve simply talks about the deregulation and how it impacts import and export because of the consumption pattern. They've touted excess FX reserve stability of the market as well. So they pointed a couple of fundamentals that are looking in the right direction. That's apart from the downside ones like the inflation, interest rate, and the ones we are quite familiar with. But when we talk all these numbers and the elites have a conversation, trickle-down economics and the deregulation and all the big drama, the man on the street is always waiting for, what I perceive is that people are saying, okay, these reforms are necessary and are bold, no problem. But at what point are we going to now start enjoying the impact? That's a question that has been difficult to answer. If you can give us the answer, that would be nice. But again, should Nigerians begin to say, should Nigerians just begin to accept the fact that this is going to be our reality for a very long time? Or how long do they have to wait to either go back close to what they were having before or just forget about it at all? What exactly are you advising ordinary Nigerian who doesn't understand economics?
Geoff, I wish I could give the average person listening, Nigerians at home, wherever they are watching the show, hope that, look, things are going to get better. Of course, leaders are dealers in hope, you know, but I don't see. I can say that on the macro level, there's been an improvement. Where we were today is not where we were in 2023 because the CBN was facing a near technical insolvency. It had all these swaps, it had all these forwards, nearly 20 or even more than $20 billion. The swaps alone were more than $10 billion. The forwards were about $7 billion. They had a negative net external reserve, and they could not defend the naira in any way. They've migrated from what you had to like a market-based foreign exchange system that has seen increased liquidity. But when you look at not seeing it trickle down to the micro and the nano, which will require a transition period, I'll say the government has done a poor job signaling to Nigerians because of a moral hazard of profligate public behavior with money. The government has not shown Nigerians that it has skin in the game. And if you're telling them to tighten their belts, you should also tighten your belt, because leaders don't lead by talking. They lead by showing example. You know, you don't tell your child that you don't want him to do this when he's saying you do it. You know, it's example, it speaks louder than words, you know. So I think there's a problem of, within that transition period, for the impact of the macro to move to the nano and micro, you're telling Nigerians and holding their hands that things are going to get better and we're with you. And while we're with you, we're also making responsible decisions and we're living by example. I've not seen that from the government, okay? On the subnational level, you see, during the tax debate, there was a strategic and systemic attempt to modify the principles of derivation. Derivation, equity of states, land mass, population, IGR. Personally, I've said this several times. I don't think that Nigeria should share revenues at fact based on the 5 principles that govern the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. I don't think that population, equity of state, and land mass should be metrics by which they share revenue. That's not fiscal federalism. That is what I call politics by compensation and settlement. That's what we're practicing in Nigeria. So we're not ready yet, okay? But when do these revenues actually is allocated to the states, and when they get it, are they investing in the right things? You know, I would say that the states, for example, they had issues with the fact that the FX revaluation made the external component of their debt to balloon. Also, fair value gains on interest rate revaluation made the bank loans and the state government debts to debt capital markets they were owing to balloon. So their debts ballooned. So a lot of them have used the increase in revenues from FACT to actually service debts. But there is still a lot that they've not shown the people that they are putting in the right places, okay? Are you putting it in education? Are you putting it in healthcare? Are you investing in community security networks, even if police is not under the concurrent legislative list and still under the exclusive legislative list? And there's still a heated debate on whether police should move from federal to state, which I think it should be, because the current massacre in Benue and several others we've seen, is an indication that the police formations from Louis Edet House is ineffective. And for policing to work and for you not to stretch the army, the military that you're currently stretching, because the military is not meant to, do policing work. They're meant to defend Nigeria against external aggression. You need to devolve policing to states and communities. So are the state governments putting the monies they get from the increased allocation to the right areas, education, primary health care, infrastructure, security, community security networks, like set up a state security fund to even fund the federal component of the policing that they don't have sufficient funding for from the federal level? Is no. So you can see the frustration with Nigerians that despite the fact that there's been gains, there's supposed to be subsidy gains from removal of subsidy, are not feeling the impact of it in their lives. And I don't blame them for complaining.
Now let's look at, we can't make those points enough, Mr. Emmanuel, but now let's look at the non-oil revenue space with regards to the industries. The National Assembly just increased the target of the Nigeria Customs Service from 6 trillion to 10 trillion. Even at its current target level, we know the impact that this has had on the import space with, price of imported goods skyrocketing. Today, most Nigerians are unable to afford a vehicle with, resort being made increasingly to Nigeria used. What do you believe this increase in target will have on the manufacturing sector?
Bukola, I sympathize with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. I've been privileged to be in close complaint firsthand. I speak to CEOs, and I hear them complain about the difficulties of doing business in Nigeria, even if you have a Presidential Ease of Doing Business Council, and Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment is doing some work in that regards. But Bukola, I tell you what. So I believe that the final draft of the passed bill that is now been sent to the President for accent has not come out yet. So we don't know if the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, for example, did fantastic work. Committee led by example, did fantastically well with it. If customs was subsumed into the Nigerian Revenue Service, and it means that when the President assigns it, customs will no longer be in charge of collecting. I don't know if that's scaled through the National Assembly. I don't know if that was struck down. But I was of the fierce view that customs should not be responsible for collecting revenues on behalf of the government. Customs should be responsible for trade facilitation and border security. And I also am of the view that immigration should be merged with customs, to form one major agency. Look, Bukola, the increasing their targets, revenues. Number one, there is the issue of under-declaration of consignment, of the value of cargoes. It's a very popular practice. If you speak to practitioners in the sector, if you speak to the Nigerian customs, they will tell you. There's an under-declaration of consignment, which means that the government is cheated of revenues, import duties, and all of those calculations. I also saw that National Assembly has asked that CISS levy for ECOWAS be removed from the formula for calculating duties paid at the ports in Nigeria. So, for example, I think the price verification system that the central bank had introduced under the former governor, Emefiele, was a masterstroke, but it has real issues implementing because the system was not properly designed. So instead of being a solution, it became like a drag on the whole system. And it was eventually voted and removed from the system. But the CBN has to work with customs to come back with that price verification system to benchmark consignments and ensure that the correct duties are paid. That's number one. Number two, there is too much focus on the Western Maritime Corridor. There's too much focus on port operations in the Western flank. Snake Island, I think Niger Dock is building a port in Snake Island. AP Mola plans to build a port in Badagry because the channel draft in Apapa is 10 meters, even if Nigerian Port Authority claims the channel draft is 13 meters. Yeah. You have all these port operations in the western flank, not enough activity in the eastern flank. NER means that the duties that are paid for bringing in cargoes to Onea is more expensive, which makes it not as competitive as Lagos. Lagos, Apapa, for example, is a river port. And I'll tell you why, this thing has to be, they need to pay attention to it as a way to, increase trade and commerce in the eastern corridor and improve the revenues generated by customs at borders. Okay? Listen, Akwa Ibom has the highest channel draft in Nigeria, about 16 meters. It has the shortest shore to sea in Nigeria, about 16 kilometers. No other state in Nigeria, littoral state, of the 8 littoral states that borders on the Atlantic Ocean, has a shore to sea like Akwa Ibom. So you have a situation where Lagos is choked, all this commerce is coming to Lagos, but if you open up the Eastern Maritime Corridor, which also is the opening and access from the Congo River down into West Africa, into like the priority river roads that was designed in 2002, 10 priority river roads that were supposed to
Kelvin,
house 10 inland ports. You open up trade and activity in the Eastern Corridor and you improve revenues. So the solution is not for the Senate to ask customs to raise the revenues they collect and they become more aggressive at the ports with people bringing in goods. The solution is to diversify maritime operations.
All right, Govt, if I may come in because of time, I think that point you just landed on is a very great point. Diversification over concentration on these Lagos ports. I don't know what's going on. There are several other ports that could be developed to spread out some of the things that are coming in and leaving our country. But because of time, we'll just have to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Kelvin Emmanuel, for your insight and the way you throw data and numbers. It's always a delight to watch. Most of the time, I don't know how you commit these numbers to your memory, but it just the way you play with this data is quite interesting and fantastic to see. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking with Senator Shehu Sani, who represented Kaduna Central in the Senate, and he will be talking to us about politics. This time we're focusing exclusively about politics of the APC, opposition, and 2027. Join us in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. And so it's time now to talk party politics, as the practice and health of it has direct and indirect bearing on the economy. And so joining us on this conversation is former federal legislator and, of course, APC chieftain. Senator Shehu Sani joins us on the program. Good morning, Senator Sani. Very glad to have you. This conversation has been long in coming. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And so we're spoiled for choice, Jeffrey and I, this morning. But maybe congratulations on Commander of the Order of the Niger is appropriate at this time. And we've been reading that you have listed northern politicians who participated in the June 12 struggle, but we haven't quite had your reaction to being named on the June 12 honors list. Would like to have that. And also this flurry of conversation on who participated in what during June 12, and some people's comments being tagged as revisionism and all of that. Would like you to react to that, sir.
Well, first of all, since the return of democracy 26 years ago, this is the first time in the history of this country where a president coming from that background of the struggle appreciated the sacrifice made by Nigerians in that struggle to emancipate our country from military dictatorship. It is a fact of history that this democracy that has lasted 22 years was a product of struggle and sacrifice of many Nigerians. Many died in the process, some went to jail, and some were forced into exile. So it wasn't just the decision of the military to hand over power, but there was a struggle and a battle that was waged. There was blood that was spilled. There were people who lost their life. There was freedom that was lost before this democracy came into place. But unfortunately, for all this period of time since democracy was restored, we have had series of presidents, including even the one that went to jail, which was Obasanjo. Never for one have they thought that they should go back, or look back and appreciate that very moment in the history of our country. So the award being conferred on us is not particularly about us, but it is about that June 12th. It's about those who at that very time took the risk of sacrificing their lives and freedom for this democracy. And also, when you see this kind of thing happen, it is more of an encouragement on Nigerians to make sacrifices, and also an encouragement on those still in the field of activism that democracy can only be protected when people can speak the truth, stand for justice, and be ready to make sacrifices. So that is, to me, that is what I think is all about. And if that was done, at least the younger generation, many people who were born after 1999, will now look back and see that maybe what they are taking for granted was something which others have sacrificed their lives for. So to me, that is my own understanding on the award and also on the struggle. Secondly, I have had some controversies coming in from the former governor, who is a brother and a friend of Jigawa State, Sule Lamido, and the sitting president, Bola Tinubu, which you raised on the issue of revisionism. But to me, you see, you can divide June 12 into two. The first is the election, and the second was the resistance. There was no doubt about it. Sule Lamido, a progressive politician, a socialist that he used to be, a man of the people. He was a chieftain and a leading figure in campaigning, in working for Abiola's victory in 1993. Not for the likes of Sule Lamido. Abiola could not have won places like Kano and many places in the northern part of Nigeria. He was a key figure in that aspect, and history should be kind to him, and he must be appreciated in that aspect. But you see, the second aspect of June 12 was the resistance. When June 12 was annulled, the political class were divided. Some decided to align themselves with Abacha, and some decided to fight for the mandate. And that is where Bola Tinubu came in. And there is no doubt about it. The contribution of Bola Tinubu in the struggle for the restoration and revalidation of June 12 mandate is unequal and unparalleled by anybody in the political realm. Because at that very time, in fact, the first time I met him was in the sitting room of Chimamanda Abiola. Me and Dr. Beko, late Dr. Beko, and Frederick Fashion. And we were all in that place strategizing on how to mobilize a national resistance and a national protest at that very era. Tinubu played a pivotal role in triggering a national uprising that gave birth to the recognition of June 12 decades after. So you can say he has not served in Abacha's government. He was also an elected senator, if I can remember. And all the right groups that existed at that very time, the pro-democracy groups, were all organizations that he has supported and directly or indirectly funded to spark up that national struggle. So I knew that at this present time there are political differences between Sule Lamido and Tinubu, but the role which was played by the two of them is clearly stated in history. Lamido played a role in Abiola's victory, but he was absent in the resistance. And as far as the resistance was concerned, Tinubu was in the forefront of that resistance for revisation of June 12 mandate. Tinubu was in touch with student union, academic staff union of universities, labor organization, pro-democracy groups, and so many things. He triggered it and supported it. So it's a fact, and if there is anything which is so evident is this, and people from pro-democracy side knows this thing about it. You can ask Falana, if Gani was alive, he could have also been a testimony to this, and then others who are still alive, Lisa Abakova, Sylvester Odion Akain, Wole Soyinka, and many who are in the academics today. Erubami, who was the chairman of Campaign for Democracy, Shehu Mayegun, who was then a student union leader, were all alive. These are people who can testify to the stewardship of Tinubu in the struggle. So it's not something anybody can take it away from him. Even I can remember a year ago, I said it before him, when I was raising issues on the issues of people who are still in prison for the NSAS protests. And I said that as someone who has supported, funded, and participated in protests, you should have a government that is tolerant to protestations and objections like this. So that is my own knowledge of what happened. There are people who actually fought for Abiola to be elected into president, but they were not there during the resistance. And there are people who were in the resistance and were not there when Abiola won the election. For example, let me take an example. The person who is now the Deputy Senate President, Jibrin Barrow, he was there during the campaign. They were the ones who are the ground soldiers that worked for Abiola, but he was not known in the struggle. The governor of Kaduna State, my brother and friend Sani, was a leading figure in. I and him were virtually the most prominent activists in northern Nigeria who have made. When I was arrested, he was the one who has been beaten and tortured, dragged from one cell to another. At a certain time, I lost touch with him because he too can't sleep in his house for all this period of time. And then in the north, we have like Balare Musa, Dr. Bola Usman, and Colonel Abubakar Dangi Umar, who have played a major role, and others which I have listed in my ex post sometimes.
All right, Senator.
So this is a fact of history. I know when people differ in political term at this, they can say so many things, but it is not true to say that Tinubu has, in one way or another, worked with Abacha. It's not true.
All right, Senator, we'll move away from the issue of June 12 for a moment, because there are certain things you look at. It looks like there may never be a time where all parties will agree. Depends on what vantage point you were to see the entire picture. Some have said there are people who supported, some have said there are people, like you said, there was a people who were part of the resistance and the others who were part of the emergence. And it's just a potpourri of everybody's role one way or the other in that mix. And in fact, there is even the mix that says some people are pretending to be part of the struggle, where they are actually in bed with the dictator, Sani Abacha. But moving away from there, we had a conversation with Babafemi Ojudu yesterday, who was a veteran journalist as well as a former senator. One of the things he said was that given the role the president has played, the president has to sit up, those were his words, to protect this democracy, citing the issue of free speech. I think that's citing the issue of, I remember, security, so that we don't get to hear what happened in the 90s. When you hear such remarks, what do you make of it? Because people have, he's not the first person to say the president has been at the vanguard of fighting to help restore democracy with all the people within his lieutenant and other people who were ahead of him as well. He has to do something to protect this democracy. Why do you think that perception is there, that he's not doing enough for the people who see it that way?
Well, with all due respect to the distinguished senator, I've had a lot of comments from people. There is even someone that I have read, he said that human rights is worse under President Tinubu than it was under General Abacha. I've heard someone who said that Nigeria is into a tyranny now and people are freer under military rule. But you see, I don't think there is anyone in the course of the struggle for democracy that have stayed so long in prison than myself. And Abacha ruled Nigeria for 5 years, and I spent the 4.5 years of his government, or 4 years and some months of his government, in jail. And it's not that it's just a detention or a decrease detention. We were actually taken to a military tribunal, charged for treason, and sentenced to life imprisonment. My sentence and that of Dr. Beko was reduced to 15 years. Well, that is my own personal history. Well, I'm just giving you a brief. So, for someone who comes from this background and knowing fully well all that happened in that struggle, I think those who are trying to compare what is happening today with military rule, I think they are being economical with the truth, are not being fair, are not properly grounded in terms of being objective to them, and fair to their own opinion. First of all, you know, for those of us who were there, it was virtually impossible to even organize a conference and discuss politics under Abacha. It is virtually impossible to organize protests, whether it is peaceful or anything, under military rule. Many people were taken and deposited in jail, whether they are student union activists, whether they are human rights activists, whether they are academics or journalists, unionists, trade unionists, and just even any person who dare utter a word. And you are not just taken, but you are being backed. Your presence in the prison is being backed by a decree. And you don't go to court easily and get an order that you should be freed. This is some of the prices that we have to pay. And they can just come to your house, pick you up for what you have said, and then from there, nothing will be heard about you. And remember, in the process, there are people who were also killed. And it's just recently that I got some names of some persons whom personally too I never knew, that they lost their life during the struggle. And many who were unknown figures went to jail, but because they are not prominent, so they have actually, their own contribution remains unknown in history. So for those of us who went to jail, for those of us who were forced to exile, for those of us who lost our dear loved ones in that struggle, when we listen to people who will comfortably sit down in their sitting room and try to say that this is a dictatorship, we simply laugh at it. So Senator Sani, I don't think what you're saying is true.
So for someone who has impeccable who many of you argue has impeccable democratic credentials, given his role in the June 12 struggle. How do you then reconcile this with his imposition of a state of emergency in Rivers State, the continuing stifling of the civic space under this administration through Cybercrime Act? And in fact, we can also cite the extension of the service year of the young lady who, you know, talked about the difficulty in the economy.
Well, Mandela was in jail for 27 years, and by the time he took over the leadership of that country after the liberation struggle, he found out that as a leader, he has to respond to issues of governance differently from the way he responds to it as a freedom fighter. There are instances where actually you can say these are breaches of fundamental rights of citizens. But in principle and institutionally and as a system, you cannot say that what we have today is worse than military rule. People still post messages and they sleep in your houses. You can't organize any press conference in Kano, Kaduna, Lagos, or Kaduna, or Abuja without 24 hours you being seen DSS in the premises of your house or coming there to disrupt it. This was how we came from. As you see me here, I wore a handcuff and a leg chain on my hands for many months. I was there when Kensariwa and his colleagues were executed in Port Harcourt prison. This was some of the experiences we had. So what you have here is that, for example, in the case of Rivers State, yes, it's a fact. The popular opinion is that a president should not have declared a state of emergency, and or even if he has did it, he shouldn't remove an elected leader. But it's a matter of trying to find a solution and giving a space for them to dialogue within themselves. And the state of emergency, I believe, is going to expire by September. So Fubara, to me, should return back to the seat if possible. But there are issues, of course. People protest and they are still arrested, but the arrest is not like the one that happens under military rule, where you disappear forever, or you have there's a possibility of you being killed there. So expression of opinion in many times, not only at the federal level, but even at the state level, is still very, and at local level is still very risky. If you look, there is something which I even want to draw your attention to. Go through Twitter, which is now X, and Facebook. You will see that people are more comfortable criticizing or opposing the president than either opposing their state governors, legislators, councillors, or local government chairmen. Because a local government chairman, a councillor, member House of Reps, and state assembly knows you directly and knows your houses and knows your family. So you find out that people hardly post any criticism against their elected representatives and local government officials. So they go to the president, which shows that comparatively, it is safer for you to criticize the president and the National Assembly than to go after the members of your own state House of Assembly. That fear is still there. But it's still a transition. Our democracy is still evolving. I think, for me, I can say that it is not yet 100% a free and democratic country, but we are very far away from where we come from. And even developed democracies today, you can see what is happening in the United States. There's a new policy today in the US that says that the content of your social media post will be used to judge whether you can be given a visa or not. And even democratic nations there was recent statistics that said there are so many people who have been arrested and charged to court for posting in the UK than any other democracy. So it's not peculiar to Nigeria today. So you can't say that we have 100% democracy and 100% protection of fundamental rights, but we are very far away from where we come from, and we can do better from here.
All right, Senator Sani, great point you raised. You know, we practice constitutional democracy, and you're a lawmaker, so you can understand where people are coming from. Because sometimes these things are not as difficult as we make it look when you just look at the books. Although we know there are encumbrances that are not visibly obvious that could play out in certain scenarios. But like the issue of River State, as far as the issue of removing elected officials, it's not in our constitution. Sole administrator is not in our constitution. So it just gives you, for those of you who were active, I was a teenager in the days of the military, so I have a feel of it. Sometimes it's very scary to hear some of the things and see some of these things that happen. But I can see why people are raising concern that the constitution is very clear. So if it's a lacuna that the constitution did not resolve, you can't resort to self-help, whether governor or president in that sense. But where I'm going to with that is, I want you to speak to also the issue of this constant accusation against the president that is responsible for the distortions in political parties. Some have said this is not the first time we're having opposition, but this level of distortion in politics. In fact, yesterday, INEC chairman met with the PDP and said, I am not your problem. Who is your national secretary? That's in essence what he was saying. And so on one hand, people are saying Ayahu and the Wike elements are the mole in the APC, in the PDP. Wike's people are saying, no, you want to destroy the party. Now we have problem in the SDP as well. You already are familiar with the crisis in the Labour Party. The NMPP also has its own problem. It looks like everywhere is in chaos. Now the APC as well has had it. So I would like you to speak to this accusation of the president being behind opposition distortion on one hand. On the other hand, the issue around this vice presidential slot that the Northeast have started agitating for. I don't think they just woke up to start agitating. What do you think happened that they started agitating? So two questions in one as we want to wrap up.
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate that the opposition in the country are looking up to the president to solve their problems. How logical it is when you have a problem in your house, then you start blaming your neighbor or your adversary for it when you should address it. If there is a problem in the PDP, it is for the PDP to solve. There's a problem in NMPP, it's for the NMPP to solve. Is there a problem in Labour Party or SDP? It's for the SDP and Labour Party to solve. I don't know whether they are also trying to ask the president to come to their party and solve their problems. If you are in the PDP and you have people working against your party, you refuse to suspend them, you refuse to expel them, and then you decided to focus on the president as being responsible for your problem, I think you are simply being irresponsible. If you are in the SDP and you have crisis in your party and you don't fix it, and then you are looking for the president or blaming the president, trying to find a scapegoat for your problems, I think you are just not serious. So to me, as a president from a ruling party, he cannot be seen trying to fix a missile or a gun that will be directed at him. It is part of a political strategy to ensure that your adversary has so much problem within his own area that he will not be able to contend. It is not something that is hidden. If you are a politician and you want to contest elections, you need to know more about your opponent. Even in football, it happens. If Nigeria is playing Tunisia, Tunisia can send spies to know how Nigeria plays its football and then see how it can strategize to win. It's all part of politics. PDP, SDP, NNPP, Labour Party should fix their internal problems and stop looking towards the president to come and solve their problems. So that is that. And if they do that, they will now play the role as a functional opposition. If you look at the opposition today and compare the one we have in 2014, you see you don't have that common resolve, common spirit, to confront a government and evicted out of power. Most of the people that paraded themselves today as opposition are people who are part and parcel of the system and were simply frustrated. You can see the former governor of Kaduna State. All his utterances is not about the country, it's not about the government, it's simply about his personal frustration and the failure that comes out of his sense of entitlement. He was dropped as a minister, and since then, he's so frustrated that each time he had the opportunity, he targets the president and repeats the same thing he has always been saying. But for those of us from Kaduna, we know that no matter the problem of today, we will not justify the evil with such a personality when he had the opportunity to do things better and he failed to do it.
All right.
So when you have a group of disgruntled elements who are frustrated and they come together, so it's not about the country, it's not about the people, it's simply about them being excluded from the system. Because the people who are now in the opposition, it's not that they philosophically differ from Tinubu. The issue is that it's not about they are now Marxist or trade unionist against a capitalist neoliberal order. They are all from the same political bourgeoisie elite class, and that they are simply excised out of power. And now they use every opportunity to weaponize our challenges and to present themselves as a better alternative. Well, but many of them have been in power since 1999. There is one who was, for example, you have been in power for almost 18 years, either as a minister or as a governor or as a senator or whatever. And now you come to say there is insecurity, there is hunger in the country. When you had the opportunity to do better and you failed to do it. So that is my own take on that aspect. I can't remember your last question.
Well, I believe that you've pretty much covered it, Senator Sani. And sending spies to study one's form of play, I'm just wondering if that is not another form of anti-intra-party activity. But let's move on to Kaduna politics. Just a bit of it, your reactions to what is playing out there. The president describing former administration as toxic, and then the government, carpeting the former governor for saying that some of the projects commissioned were his own legacy projects. How does that impact on, Kaduna politics, particularly as it has to do with, as we approach 2027? In about 2 minutes, sir.
Well, first of all the projects that the president commissioned were Obasani's successes in office in the last 2 years. The most important success which Obasani has been able to achieve is uniting the Muslim northern part of Kaduna and the Christian part of Kaduna. When the former governor was in office, he institutionalized a system of apartheid where the people of the southern part of Kaduna were treated as outcasts and were treated with disdain. They were institutionally marginalized and ostracized out of the system. That is what Obasani has been able to do to build bridges between the two. So that becomes a solution to the toxic politics which came. Now, the person who was making those utterances, when he was in power, he borrowed so much money that elevated Kaduna to the second most indebted state in the country and left a litany of uncompleted projects in all parts of the state, with burdens to pay, contractors going to court, getting garnishing order on Kaduna State. If not for the intervention of the president to save Kaduna State, there will never have been even enough money to pay salaries in Kaduna State. This man ruled Kaduna with the most vicious and irresponsible strategy as a governor. He destroyed the homes of innocent people. He sacked civil servants without paying them their entitlement. He sacked teachers after repeated tests and exams that were all meant to punish them. He unleashed a regime of evil in the state to the point that he initiated a process of using financial issues to solve banditry, which now became the seed of the problems that we are facing in northwestern part of Nigeria today. All the progress, in fact, the president even never had the opportunity to go to other rural areas. We have 23 local governments in Kaduna. All that the former governor has done is simply 40% part of Kaduna, which is in the northern part of Kaduna North. So if you are a visitor to Kaduna, you move from the airport, you are coming to Kaduna North, and within those enclaves, there were renovations and constructions that happened for 8 years. So you will think that that is the whole Kaduna. You need to go out and see the rot that was left behind. We are very much glad that Sani is our governor today, and he is doing the work which we are all proud of. And we, the House of Fulani, northern part of Kaduna, we are now living in peace and harmony with the Christian in southern part of our state. And that should be attributed to the style of leadership of Sani, which he was able to build that bridge. And we are very much grateful for that.
All right. And we're sure that spokespersons of the former governor and indeed the former governor himself will have contentions to that, and we're ready to take on their contentions. But we must thank you very much for coming through at this point, Senator Shehu Sani, former federal lawmaker and, of course, APC chieftain. Thank you for your time and thoughts on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And so from this point, we'll take a break. When we return, we'll look at the developments in Nollywood and, of course, the contributions of the Directors Guild of Nigeria to the Nollywood space. So stay with us for this next one. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Let's taper a bit on the big talk. This is also a big talk, but in a very interesting way. Let's talk Nollywood. We're being joined on the program by a filmmaker, president-elect of the Directors Guild of Nigeria, Mr. Uche Agbo. He joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So you're president-elect, right?
Yes.
So when are you going to officially be president? Be sworn in?
This one, yeah, that will be on the 17th of July.
Okay, that's
a few weeks from now.
Yeah, is it a Saturday, right?
That should be a Thursday.
Okay,
I think.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking whether it's the same day with the local government elections in
No.
Lagos.
It's on a Thursday.
How's it been?
Well, we are trying to get our ass together after a dogged fight, and we're trying to also unify the house, try to get everybody, rally around everyone, so that the big task, begins in earnest.
So who were you contending against? Who did you beat silly?
That would be Teko Benson.
Yeah, I wouldn't, say beat silly. It's for me, we as a professional organization, we don't play the politics of opposition per se. We only see ourselves as people with different convictions, and we may have different paths to the same thing. I feel like both of us were seeking for the same thing, but perhaps the members see my part as a better part in this particular moment. And so that's why I came out
And you were deputy to the former...
Yes, I'm still the vice president.
Vice president, yes. But you're president-elect.
Elect now.
So
yes.
How did that position you, for ease into the office?
Okay, so first and foremost, I came into the leadership of the Guild since 2016. I came in as Assistant National Secretary. I served, after Assistant National Secretary, I served as National Secretary of the Guild before getting to the Vice President position. So in these 9 years of service, it opened up pathways for me to understand what our people want, what the yearnings of the film directors in Nigeria are. And I was able to draft my manifesto in that line, to be able to give them hope and let them know that having understood what their worries are, what their challenges are, what their issues are, we'll be able to tackle it head on from day one in office. And so I think that was one of the things that, helped endear me to the voters on the day of election. Yes.
How contentious was it? Because you're sounding like, I cover politics and is it that intense?
Yes, it was actually one of the, I make bold to say that it's actually one of the biggest election in Nollywood. I make bold to say that.
How many are you in your numbers? So we'll look at what we're talking about.
Actually, we're over, as directors, right, both within and outside Nigeria, we are close to 700, but the eligible voters were about 256 in number, yes. And we were voted across all the zones across the country. We're about 7 zones: Lagos, Enugu, Asaba, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Akwa Ibom. Then, of course, we have the diaspora that also voted from all across the world: Canada, UK, America.
Is it expensive? Is there do they rig elections? I'm just asking general politics.
Well, no, it was one of the most transparent and credible elections that you can ever.
So you didn't spend money? Are you saying you didn't spend money?
If you're talking about transportation money...
Did you induce delegates?
No. It wasn't even a delegate thing. It was everybody who is qualified, who is up to date, who is an eligible voter, voted from their various zones. But if you're talking about spending money, maybe the money that we used to travel across all this, because I went to every part of this country where we had film and television directors to speak to them and to share my thoughts with them.
So help us with some education. Beyond film festivals, what value also is the Directors Guild of Nigeria bringing to Nollywood? And over the years, what value, has the Guild brought to Nollywood in terms of, standards and in terms of training, equipping, because there's a whole value chain in the Nollywood industry when you talk about visuals, audio, the creative aspect. So what value is the Guild bringing?
Okay, I need to differentiate here. The film festival circuit, which I'm also a player in, is slightly different from the major role the Directors Guild of Nigeria, has been playing over the years. As a matter of fact, this is our 26 years now. Yeah, I think it was founded in 1999, so this is about 26 years. Over the years, we have had 8 presidents. The current sitting president is the 8th president of the Guild. And over the years, we have had, as a director who is seen as the god on set, who is the storyteller, the main filmmaker, if we are going to be honest. Directors are actually the actual filmmakers because they leverage on all the aspects of the production to actually tell the story. While the producer may provide the funding, it is actually the director who tells the story using various elements on set. And so over the years, we have had lots of trainings for film directors. We have also had a lot of mentorship, although the kind of mentorship we have had over the time could be seen to be informal mentorship, where an accomplished director takes on another director who is up and coming and grooms such a director to the point where the director can stand on his own and start making films. And we have a plethora of such stories of people who were trained by others in the industry. But beyond that, we have also had formal trainings. As a matter of fact, during the Andamnechi administration, it took about 20 to 25 of us, members of Directors Guild of Nigeria, to Colorado in America, where they had they had some weeks of training, and they came back to begin to apply what they've learned, in the process of filmmaking. So, the Directors Guild of Nigeria has played that pivotal role. We see ourselves as the apex guild in the creative industry in Nigeria, and as a matter of fact, we are in charge of the creative equity of the Nigerian film industry, if you look at it critically, because the value that you see on the end product is actually the product of the mind of the director.
So why do you think the people decided to choose you ahead of your contender? I know that I saw a video online where I think the chairman of your campaign, Charles Inoje,
yes,
he was so excited. He was thanking all your people. By the way, we were supposed to have him here too.
Yeah.
You're going to help us get it. So Mr. Charles was really happy, commending people who supported you. Why do you think you were chosen?
Okay, so my message was centered on systems and structures, because I think that's one of the things that Nollywood has been lacking over the years. we have been so engrossed with personality-driven guilds and associations, whereas we always think about who has the highest name, who is the most popular to come and lead us. And when the person is done and gone, it seems like there's a reset button, and we start all over again, because a new personality comes on board, and that person comes on board with his own vision, his own aspiration, his own complexes, and it seems like we are starting and stopping every other time. So, but what I have chosen, the path I've chosen to work on, is the path of systems and structure. No establishment, no industry can actually thrive without putting their house in order, without having structures. And so what I campaigned on is, I don't want you to know my name, as case may be, but I want you to know the guild. And in order to know the guild, you must have to put the systems and structures in place. So you must institutionalize certain practices of the guild. Now we're talking about training. How do we institutionalize training? So it's no longer about in the whims and caprices of whoever that is leading, that it is now enshrined as a doctrine in our constitution that this is what has to be done, right? So I talked about the DGen Academy, establishing DGen Academy, that is now going to be a regular training institution within the guild. I talked about the fellowship program, Directors Guild of Nigeria, residency and fellowship program, that will be a sort of a funnel that will be bringing in younger directors through our fellowship program. Whereas you bring in a lot of people, we bring in young directors into a house, being mentored over a period of time and handed over knowledge that they may not necessarily gain from the film school or whatever you may call it, right? So
hands-on experience.
Yes, hands-on experiences. Yes. So I tried as much as possible to campaign on those bases, and I think the message resonates with the people because they've experienced leadership.
No, as you're saying it resonates with me as well. If I would have voted for you perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you sounded, it's the right thing to do.
So that's what I think did the magic, right? And I meant every word I said. And as we are gearing up to being handed over on the 17th of July, we're already putting certain systems in place behind the scene. We're already working, we're already reaching out to some institutions, some partnership organizations, because at the end of the day, if Nollywood must thrive, if Nollywood must move from seemingly informal arrangement to a structured arrangement, a guild must have to lead it. And DGN is by no mistake is one of the the best to lead, because
I wish we had so much time. Just have 30 seconds.
Speaking of systems and structures, you know, some would say some of the things that Nollywood needs is a film village, you know, access to locations to record, to film, and all of that. But we see that this is taking place in silos. One person builds his, the other person builds his. So does the guild have the buy-in of the Actors Guild of Nigeria, all of those big names who are directors, such that you create something that is now a commonwealth for Nollywood, not just, you know, things, structures that are owned in silos? Okay,
so the truth remains that nothing worthwhile is built in a day. So the first step is what we are about to take, which is bringing all the stakeholders into one room. Of course, we're going to engage all the stakeholders. The current president of the Actors Guild of Nigeria, Chief Emeka Rollers, is actually a friend, and I'm going to engage him. I'm going to engage the Association of Movie Producers. I'm going to engage all the critical stakeholders, because we must begin to think in that direction. Of course, Nollywood needs many things other than just Film Village. Nollywood needs exhibition platform. Nollywood, the distribution channels of Nollywood is so limited. There's a lot that Nollywood needs.
Okay.
But, okay.
No, just land on your thought in 10 seconds.
Okay. There's a lot that Nollywood needs, right? But the reality is that, like you rightly pointed out, it seems like we're doing things in pockets. Right? It is the time. It is the right time now for us to collectively come together and start looking at things as it affects all of us.
Okay, fantastic. So I know it will not be fair. What project are you working on, or you've worked on, in 10 seconds?
That we should be looking at.
Project?
Yeah, of course you're a director. I don't know.
Well, I've worked on a lot of projects.
Is there anyone you're promoting now?
Currently?
Yeah.
Well, In Between Colors.
Okay, In Between Colors. Fantastic. Yes. So they can see it in cinemas or on streaming platforms?
No, In Between Colors will be out on a streaming platform soon.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
I think your message about systems and structures resonates with. In fact, that's what we need as a country. It's not just DGN and all
Perhaps
of that.
we will start showing the country how it is done.
Under your leadership.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. We wish your tenure. How long are you going to be president?
Well, for the first 10 or 2 years.
Okay. They're already thinking of re-election. You're sounding like a politician.
Like President
filmmaker and president-elect of the Directors Guild of Nigeria, vice president of the Directors Guild of Nigeria, and president-elect of the Directors Guild of Nigeria. So you just stay put with us in just a moment before we run away from here. But let's bring you up to speed with what you've been saying on X. EFCC arresting NNPCL CFO Umar Issa over alleged $7.2 billion refinery rehabilitation fraud. Gray, you say, I've seen this script before, nothing happens and they go free in the end. My own is why point out a crime and fraud repeatedly if you can't punish them?
Dauda Onowola says, minus the 200+ trillion they're looking for in the same organization, this is not greed, it is wickedness pro max.
We can also tell you that arrests have been made as far as the Yewata killing is concerned. IGP says 28 persons are now in their custody. George Waifo, this is your reaction. Great news. We sincerely hope these are actual assailants. If prosecuted and found guilty, the action of government will determine what the impact of this arrest will be on possible subsequent reoccurrence.
And Victor Ogbogu says, where are the people arrested? When are they being arraigned in court? Well, the IGP says they will have their day in court very soon. But Ogbogu also seeks to know which court. We need to know all of this if you guys are being serious. So the demand for accountability is also there.
All right, so that's it on the program. Thank you so much. Remember, Sunrise Daily already standing by to take you at the top of the hour. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga.
And thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Bye-bye.